I really like the Laravel validation features that we get in the framework. They're so easy to use. It feels like there's a rule for almost anything you can imagine. And if you do find a rule that isn't there out of the box, you can create a custom rule, and it kind of feels like a first-class rule. So Laravel validation is great. In fact, Aaron and I wrote a whole book on the topic. You can check that out at masteringlaravel.io if you're interested. One of the things that validation includes is the specific text of the error message you get if a rule fails. And generally speaking, I like the rules we get out of the box. I don't find myself customizing them a lot. But sometimes I do think it's worthwhile to think through in a little more detail, not only what is the specific error message we return to them, but even what type of error is it. And let's talk about that by looking at an example. So over here, I have a form request, and I'm actually not looking at rules, so we're just going to talk about authorization. So for example, let's say that I have a marketplace where you can post jobs, other people can apply to them. And one of the rules for applying to a job is the job you're applying to can't be expired, whatever that means. Maybe they didn't pay for the listing beyond a certain date, or maybe it's already been filled. But if the job is expired, it cannot be applied to. And so we've already put some logic in place that when we present the user a list of jobs to apply to, either we're not even going to show them jobs that have expired, or maybe we show it to them and we just don't have the apply button on there. So we might reason a user, unless they're monkeying around on our site, they wouldn't be able to hit this error. So we could approach it this way. Very simple implementation using authorization to say, if this job posting that they're applying to is expired, we're just going to return false from this method, which in turn Laravel will return that as a 403 authorization error. Probably like out of the box, it's not styled. It's just like one of those generic gray 403 error messages. But again, they shouldn't be able to hit this error. So if they do, they're doing something they shouldn't do. I don't care if they see kind of an ugly error. That's one way to approach this. But let's think about it for a second. What if somebody opened up a job, they're about to apply to it, and then they go get a cup of coffee. They come back 15 minutes later, and now in that window of 15 minutes while they were gone, the job expired. What should happen when they click apply? Or what if they bookmark the page, right? They're kind of busy. They see that. They're interested in the job listing, but I'm going to get to that on Saturday when I got a little more time, and they come back, and then now it's expired, and we let them apply to it. Not a good experience to just dump them to a 403 page. And again, maybe you're thinking like, oh, there's all sorts of like front end things we could do to prevent that. That's true. But let's just consider this from the angle of purely from the back end enforcing this logic. How could we do better than just dumping them to an error page and making them question, like, is this site broken? Like, what happened to that job? Where did it go? Here's a different approach. So still within the form request, we can use this with validator method that's part of the form request. And we essentially can hook in to form validation and say, I want some logic to run after the other rules have already run. And so the logic is the same, right? We're getting the job posting out of the route and we're checking if it's expired or not. The difference is what we do if it is expired. Here, instead of just returning an authorization error, we are hooking in to the normal error messages that are going to get returned to the front end. We're keying it to something that's relevant. So job ID is the job they're applying to. Maybe this isn't even a field they can see, but it's somewhere on the page where we can render an error message in connection with it. And we're telling them what happened. We're telling them why they can't apply to this job, because this job posting has expired and is no longer available. So it's a small detail. It's a little bit more code, and it's maybe outside the norm of how we code our form requests. But in this case, I think it's worth doing. And it's really not that much extra effort. But this is a nice example of where it is good to sort of think things through from the user experience perspective and try to decide, is this a better way to handle it? Is showing them the 403 fine? Sometimes it might be. In this case, it's sort of one of the core functions of our application. I'm going to put a little extra effort into it. I'm going to leverage this tool that Laravel gives me and give a nicer experience to the user in the unlikely event that they hit this error.